For telepathy, communication without words. Definition and theories of telepathy. Telepathy has always fascinated the collective imagination as a mysterious channel of communication between human beings, overcoming linguistic and physical barriers. This phenomenon refers to the transmission of information between individuals without the use of known senses or tangible means of communication. But how exactly is telepathy defined, and what are the theories that try to explain it? At its core, telepathy is understood as the ability to receive thoughts or emotions from another person without the use of the traditional five senses. This can happen either intentionally, as when someone tries to convey a specific thought, or spontaneously, as when two people discover they have had the same idea at the same time. Several theories try to explain this enigma. One of the oldest hypotheses suggests the idea of ether, an invisible medium through which thoughts could travel. While this theory has largely been abandoned by modern science, it has set the stage for further investigations in the field. A more modern, science-based theory proposes the idea that telepathy can work through quantum waves. It is suggested that, under certain circumstances, subatomic particles can influence each other at a distance, creating a non-local type of communication. This theory, while fascinating, still remains a subject of debate and requires further research. Others believe that telepathy may be the result of synchronized brain frequencies. If two people are tuned into the same wavelength, they may be able to share thoughts and emotions. This idea is supported by some research showing brainwave synchronization between emotionally close people, such as mothers and children, or between identical twins. Another interesting field of investigation concerns the role of magnetic fields in telepathy. Some studies suggest that the human brain may be sensitive to minute variations in the Earth's magnetic field, and that these variations may facilitate telepathic communication. However, it is important to point out that despite these theories, telepathy remains a poorly understood and controversial area of scientific research. While many people report personal experiences of telepathic communication, science still struggles to provide hard, replicable evidence. Yet, history is dotted with stories and testimonies of people who claim to have had telepathic experiences. These stories range from twins sharing feelings simultaneously, to stories of people sensing a traumatic event happening to a loved one thousands of miles away. But what is the historical evidence of these phenomena? And how can they be assessed objectively? In the next section, we will explore the historical evidence for telepathy, trying to discern between myth and reality. Historical evidence. The interest in telepathy and the possibility of nonverbal communication between individuals has deep roots that extend across various eras and cultures. Since the dawn of time, popular narratives and personal anecdotes have provided countless testimonies of alleged telepathic experiences. One of the oldest testimonies dates back to ancient civilizations such as Egypt, where priests and pharaohs believed they could communicate with the gods through a form of mental transmission. These beliefs were often linked to religious rituals and were intended to obtain divine wisdom or guidance. During the Middle Ages, telepathy was often associated with magic and occultism. There are many stories of witches and wizards who claimed they could read minds or communicate with others remotely through mysterious powers. While these narratives were often steeped in superstition, they highlight the ancient human fascination with the ability to communicate across physical boundaries. During the Renaissance, with the rise of science and rationalism, telepathy began to be viewed with skepticism. However, it didn't completely disappear. Indeed, in this period there were attempts to study the phenomenon more systematically. For example, some alchemists and philosophers explored the idea that there was a universal ether, through which thoughts could travel. With the advent of the modern era and the emergence of psychology as a discipline, telepathy became the object of scientific experimentation. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, organizations such as the Society for Psychical Research in England undertook detailed studies of individuals who claimed to have telepathic abilities. One of the best-known experiments is that of Zener cards, used to test an individual's ability to predict or read a card chosen by another participant. However, it is important to note that much of this early research was affected by methodological problems and biases. This has led to criticism and doubts about the validity of the alleged telepathic evidence. But stories of telepathic communication aren't just for humans. There are numerous accounts of alleged telepathy between humans and animals. Who hasn't heard of the dog that seems to know when his owner is coming home, even if he arrives early? Or of horses reacting to the unspoken thoughts of their riders? In the next paragraph, we will delve into the fascinating world of possible telepathic communication between different species, trying to understand if there is a scientific basis for these fascinating narratives. Telepathy between species, animals, and men. Over the years, while human telepathy has been widely debated, an intriguing and less explored dimension is the possibility of telepathic communication between different species, particularly between animals and humans. It is a field of investigation that has collected numerous anecdotes and testimonies, often at the center of stories from pet owners and animal behavior researchers. Let's start with a fascinating example. Dogs, in particular, are said to have an uncanny ability to sense when their owner is about to come home, even at unexpected times. This phenomenon has been studied by the biologist Rupert Sheldrake, who conducted experiments on dogs that seemed to predict the arrival of their masters at home. While some of his findings have been controversial, there is no denying the wide range of evidence that suggests a special bond between animals and humans. It's not just dogs that have such abilities. Many cat owners report similar behaviors, while horses are known for their ability to sense the intentions and emotions of their riders. Even in the wild world, there are stories of animals showing incredible sympathy with humans, such as dolphins rescuing distressed swimmers or birds bearing warning signs. The hypothesis of telepathic communication between man and animal is not based only on anecdotes. Some researchers have tried to probe this mystery more systematically. Through controlled experiments, they observed behaviors that suggest a non-verbal, non-physical form of communication between species. For example, in some studies, human guinea pigs were asked to transmit a thought or image to an animal in a separate room. Surprisingly, on many occasions, the animal seemed to react synchronously, almost as if it had got the message. However, there are also many challenges to studying cross-species telepathy. First, there's the measurement problem. How can we be sure that an animal is actually sensing a human thought, rather than reacting to some other undetected stimulus? Furthermore, the very concept of a thought may be different between humans and animals, given our different biology and brain structure. Despite the uncertainties, the possibility of telepathic communication between species opens the door to a deeper understanding of the bonds between us and animals. If such phenomena are real and can be better understood, they could revolutionize the way we view our relationship to the animal world. Looking ahead, as we prepare to explore the next topic, proposed neurological mechanisms, we ask ourselves, could there be structures in the brain, both human and animal, that facilitate such connections? Is science ready to uncover these mysteries? Read on to find out. Proposed neurological mechanisms. In an attempt to understand the mysterious phenomenon of telepathy, many scientists have tried to identify possible neurological mechanisms that could underlie it. This has been a daunting task, given that telepathy, by definition, eludes known, tangible modes of communication, such as speech or gesture. One of the initial approaches has been to look at brain waves. It has long been known that the brain emits electromagnetic waves, commonly studied through the electroencephalogram, EEG. Some researchers have speculated that if telepathy were real, it could manifest itself as a kind of tuning between two individuals' brain waves. In other words, if two people were somehow connected telepathically, their brain waves could show synchronized patterns. While there have been some experiments suggesting such synchronization, the results have been inconclusive and often criticized for lack of rigorous experimental control. Another possible mechanism proposed concerns mirror neurons. These are cells in the brain that are activated both when one individual performs an action and when they observe another person performing the same action. They could, therefore, represent a biological basis for empathy and understanding of others. Some argue that these neurons may play a role in telepathic perception, allowing one individual to feel or I feel another's experience. However, there is still no definitive proof of this. A more recent theory suggests that telepathy may have to do with quantum fields. According to this view, telepathic connections could emerge from the intrinsically interconnected nature of the quantum world, where particles can influence each other from a distance in a spooky way, as observed by Albert Einstein. If the brain functioned at quantum levels, as some propose, then there may be a mechanism by which information is exchanged telepathically. This theory, however, remains highly speculative and outside the scientific mainstream. Finally, there is the possibility that the brain contains as yet unknown structures or mechanisms that could facilitate telepathy. Brain science is still evolving, and there's a lot we don't know about how it works. In conclusion, while many intriguing theories exist, the neurological basis of telepathy remains enigmatic. But one thing is clear: our desire for connection with others runs deep. In the next section, we will explore how emotional bonds, such as those between parents and children or between twins, can influence or enhance telepathic experiences. Could there be a link between the depth of our bond with another being and our ability to feel them from a distance? Read on to learn more. Telepathy and emotional ties. The relationship between telepathic experiences and emotional bonds has been one of the most intriguing areas of research in the field of telepathy. Numerous anecdotes and testimonies suggest that people who share a deep emotional connection may also share experiences of nonverbal communication or extrasensory perception. A classic example involves twins. Many twins report feeling or knowing when their twin was going through a difficult time or suffered an injury, even if they were separated by great distances. These episodes, often described as twin feelings, suggest that a special connection exists between genetically identical individuals. Parents, especially mothers, also tell stories of knowing when something is wrong with their children. This maternal sixth sense has often been seen as a form of telepathy, where the intense bond between mother and child allows for some kind of communication beyond the traditional senses. But how does this possible telepathic connection manifest itself? Some suggest that, in times of high emotion or stress, a person's energy or frequency could be amplified, making it more receivable by those attuned to it. In other words, a deep emotional bond could act as an amplifier, strengthening the telepathic signal. Skeptics, however, argue that such experiences could be the result of coincidence or a greater attention and attunement to the people with whom one is closest. For example, we might notice and remember the times we have felt something was wrong with a loved one and then found out it was true, but forget the many times those hunches proved unfounded. While the idea of a telepathic connection enhanced by emotional bonding is fascinating, the scientific evidence remains ambiguous. Indeed, there are significant challenges in designing experiments that can rigorously and controlledly test such phenomena. But the search doesn't stop. As technology and experimental techniques advance, scientists are designing ever more sophisticated experiments to probe the mysteries of telepathy and emotional bonds. In the next section, we'll dive into the world of testing and experimentation, exploring how scientists are trying to measure and understand these puzzling phenomena. What methods are they using and what discoveries are emerging? Let's go find out. Tests and experiments. Telepathy research has always elicited a mixture of fascination and skepticism. Over the years, several methods have been devised to test the existence and capabilities of telepathic communication. Many of these studies have tried to eliminate any possible conventional explanation, focusing on cases where information appears to have been transferred in non-traditional ways. One of the most famous experiments in the field is the so-called Ganzfeld test. In this procedure, a sender tries to transmit a picture or video to a receiver who is in another room. The recipient, with eyes covered and listening to white noise through headphones, enters a state of altered sensitivity, similar to a semi-trance. After a certain period, the receiver is shown 4 images or videos and asked to select the one he feels has been transmitted. In several trials, the results exceeded the expectations of the case, suggesting a possible transmission of information. Another approach has involved using functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, devices to examine people's brain activity as they attempt to perform telepathic acts. While the results have been mixed, some research has indicated coincident patterns of brain activity between sender and receiver during attempts at telepathic communication. Beyond the laboratory experiments, there has also been a lot of research in the field. For example, studies on animals, especially dogs and horses, have sought to determine whether these animals could sense their owner's intentions or emotions from a distance. While some results were surprising, the variability and difficulty of controlling such experiments make conclusions less certain. However, despite efforts to conduct rigorous and controlled research, telepathy remains a controversial field. Many skeptics argue that successful experiments can be explained by methodological errors, researcher bias, or simple coincidence. Furthermore, some critics argue that, without a plausible physical explanation for how telepathy might work, we should be wary of jumping to conclusions. But perhaps the bigger question is whether telepathy, if it exists, will ever be fully understood through traditional scientific methods. Criticisms and controversies. While telepathy continues to intrigue many, it is not without its wide range of criticisms and doubts. Science, being rooted in the replicability and falsifiability of observations, requires that every claim, especially those that challenge conventional understandings, be subjected to rigorous scrutiny. And telepathy claims are no exception. First, many critics argue that experiments conducted in this field are often characterized by methodological shortcomings. For example, they may not have an adequate control group, or they may not control for all external variables that could influence outcomes. A classic example involves the Ganzfeld tests, where it was suggested that even small sensory losses, such as an inaudible sound or change in light, could affect the results. Similarly, issues of researcher bias, such as a tendency to interpret ambiguous data favorably, can compromise the objectivity of telepathy experiments. If you found this video interesting, please like it and consider subscribing to our channel for more insights and discoveries. Thank you for your support.